From South Bend, Indiana, welcome to 3Degrees Discussions. I'm your host, Mike Vasquez. This is a podcast devoted to the stories behind the innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the 3D printing industry.
One of the fun things I like to do about 3 or 4 days into a trade show is to touch base with my team. And usually they're falling apart a little bit around the edges. Somebody might have a sore throat and need throat lozenges or something. And so I order a Target run, and have Target delivered to the hotel and take care of everybody's little woes and stuff. And that just alone makes people go, man, like people care here.
That was Janet Dickinson. She's a CRO at Endeavour 3D. They have built a contract manufacturing business from the ground up, and she joins the show today to talk about that journey and the challenge that the team has overcome to make a successful business in additive manufacturing. Before we get started, head over to www.3degreescompany.com and subscribe to the podcast. And we can listen to the show anywhere you download your podcast, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or Stitcher. Also, if you or anyone in your company are looking for materials, qualification, or general additive manufacturing support, reach out to the team through our website or via email at info@3degreescompany.com. All right, Janet, thank you so much for joining the show today. Super excited for the conversation. I like to start way at the beginning to get kind of a sense of the person. So where were you born and kind of what were some of those formative years like in terms of getting you into the kind of mentality of manufacturing?
Yeah. Well, basically, I was born in Whittier, California. I still live here. Fun fact, I live in the house I grew up in. Awesome. So one of my offices is actually my childhood bedroom, which is a little odd. But basically, grew up in an environment where, had a lot of resources to things like music and just different technology things. And even in elementary school, was exposed to some great teachers who had put things in our heads to just try to teach us how to think differently, and which was really great. One of the best exercises in 5th grade was write out how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then the teacher went ahead and she described how we all wrote it, which was a real eye-opener. And then as time went along and I was really identified in high school that my aptitude was IT and that I should really go the realm of IT. And so, first into college, start, doing coding and programming and things like that. And of course, that peanut butter and jelly sandwich just came right back to me, because coding on how to get a robot to stand up and walk to the other side of the room is very much like building a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in 5th grade. So, and then actually right after getting into that, I had to go work for a living. So went to work for a manufacturing company, started in customer service role. Then so I'm old enough to know that when computers started out and, as we started, the company was all about doing everything manual with typewriters, but then computers came in, which was my aptitude. So then I became the person in charge of computers and started out at the very early ages of the IT world, and which was really eye-opening to me because it really showed really how an industry can start technology-wise very young and then mature. And as I got into more of the company, I started taking every role possible, and we started installing different softwares, which gave me different ERP softwares that gave me access to understanding the whole business. And then finally, I got the opportunity, after running IT for a number of years, of jumping into operations. So then I was an operations manager for probably about 10, 15 years and really got into the manufacturing and understanding how manufacturing worked. And we even had 2 facilities in the U.S. We had one in LA, one in Atlanta. I was in charge of the one in LA, but then I also went and consulted with our facility in the UK. So it was really quite a broad spectrum of learning about manufacturing. And we were in an industry that at the beginning, even in the manufacturing end, we had to teach people about our products. And so we had to really, it was a premier product. We could charge more money for it at the beginning. But then after a while, it became a very commodity based. And so then you have to drive your costs down. And that's kind of how I got into manufacturing.
Couple questions. So what were you manufacturing, or what product?
Basically, products for architectural concrete. So think of decorative concrete. I always tell people, think of Disneyland. Yeah. Main Street Red, Splash Mountain, all of that is just decorative concrete. But as soon as you learn about decorative concrete, you start looking around and seeing how many things really are made out of concrete and, can be colored and everything of that nature. So.
And when you were first looking for this job or found this job, like was manufacturing a decision factor? Were you targeting that industry at all, or would it just kind of, it happened that way?
Well, actually, getting into this industry and getting into this job was that basically I had worked for the founder and CEO of Endeavour for decades. I said how many years? I really show my age, but and I was working in a job that I didn't really like. It wasn't part of manufacturing. I had moved into a different segment of being in business development for a big company, and it was COVID. And all of a sudden, I get this phone call from Phil and saying, "Hey, I'm getting ready to start a company. It's going to be a manufacturing company. Do you want to come help me run this company? And you and Tim can kind of make all the decisions about how we run the company, how employees are treated, and basically just do what we have done for decades before." And so it was very exciting to take on the opportunity because I love building teams and just building things. And manufacturing is just a way to do that.
And so when was the first time that you saw or heard of 3D printing?
Oh man, that was, I was going to say it's probably 15 years ago, especially being in IT and such, is that, you get exposure to it. I'm in California, so a hotbed of technology. And, and also I personally know engineers in all types of industries like aerospace and, medical devices and things of that nature. And of course, they talk about it and stuff like that. So as soon as I found out I could really get involved in the industry and get to know it, man, I was very excited to, just jump into this because I really feel like I said, when I was just into IT and I saw, okay, like one of the first computers I probably ever touched was like a Commodore 64, right? So you start at that level to where IT is today and you see the adoption of different technologies and different aspects. I see that in additive now. And I really see that we're just in the infancy of it and how it can grow. And I'm so excited to be part of another, evolution of technology. And so again, seeing it where 3D printers were hobbyist or things were in schools so that kids can start learning STEM activities to where it's now going to be a full manufacturing process and to be able to be competitive in the manufacturing industry. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be part of it.
And so tell us a little bit about Endeavour 3D. So like what was kind of the start of that? Like where are you guys now? And then we'll kind of dive into some more specific questions.
Certainly. So Endeavour 3D was, again, like I said, we were COVID babies where it was middle of COVID, and our founder, Phil, he was owner of a building in Douglasville, Georgia, and the occupants notified him that they were moving out. And he said, "Well, what do I do with this building? I can rent it out. It could be a warehouse, maybe employ 5 people. 65,000 square feet. So there's room, and we love the community of Douglas County, Georgia. I've been going there for so long. We have good friends there and stuff. And he just thought, no, we're going to be manufacturers again. And because in manufacturing, we can bring a lot to the industry, and not to the industry, but to the community, and employ some of those same people, be involved in the community, which we are, and just be part of something bigger for that community and the state and the country, bring manufacturing back." And so again, we started off with carbon. And so we dove right into carbon. We always knew we'd be doing metals. So that has been it takes time to process through metals. So we tried carbon for a while, and that just wasn't the right fit. So we moved over to HP multi-jet fusion. And so we've been really running, the HP machines. And then just this year, dove into the metal jet. So it's been fun. It's, I always say you could have a dream and a vision of what you want a company to be. But then when reality starts hitting, then you really have to drive it to be a profitable business and something that people want, then that's the hard work. And there may be a lot of U-turns or left turns, or you just have to get through it.
And so what were some of those realities? I mean, so you started with on the plastic side, you're in the metal side now. I mean, what 3D printing's been around for a while. It's still kind of very capital intensive business, right? Like you need the machine and all the stuff that goes around it. And sometimes in metals, all the safety features that go around it too. But like, what's as you're kind of on your journey, like what were some of those realities that maybe didn't look exactly like what you may have envisioned on the business plan?
Well, I think when you get into the business development things and you start talking to different people, there's different groups of people to talk to about additive. And I mean, you go to AMUG and that's like talking to everybody who's drank the Kool-Aid. Everybody knows what you're talking about. You can't fool anybody, because if you say something that's not right, they're going to call you on it, which is great. But then you walk into other types of industry events and they don't know what you're talking about. And so there's this big change that needs to happen in the industry where we have to continue education. We have to, continue that. And I think we didn't really realize at the time that we would have to be selling to people who didn't know additive. I mean, some of the sales calls we're on is we could be talking to one customer who they get it, they understand what it's going to take to build and invest in having a digital. And then we talk to other people that they're like, oh, what is this? This isn't something you just have in your basement. This is full production. So there's a big wide range. And I think that was an interesting point, because that changes your whole marketing and your strategies completely. And you really have to break it up and be ready to invest in that. And I think that actually paralleled what we did in our prior company, because when we were doing the decorative concrete, when we first got into it, people didn't know anything about decorative concrete. So what we did was we actually had a full group of our people who were dedicated to working with architects and other people to spec and to learn about how to actually work decorative concrete. We had a team that traveled worldwide to Dubai and China to do all kinds of technology training on how to do decorative concrete. You wouldn't think you'd have to teach, that in other parts of the world, but they don't have the same standards as we do in the US. So we went all over the world to do that. And so I feel that this is the same thing here, is that we have to go out and teach people about this. And after a while, there'll be more and more people who are part of it. But I think that was the big part of it. I mean, did I think we were going to hang up our shingle and people were just going to come and buy parts by the millions? No. Did I think that every job was going to be worth $1 million? No. But I think that just the speed of it and the whole amount that it's still not a full manufacturing process is something that we're still working on and probably weren't expecting it to be this hard of a process.
And so you mentioned earlier kind of the team building part. You want to talk a little bit about like what is a team in a 3D printing company like yours? Like who are the people that work there? I think one of the things I'm very passionate about is kind of workforce development, kind of like you said, kind of bringing jobs to communities and manufacturing jobs back to the US. So like I'm always interested to hear kind of how people describe kind of what it is they do and like the types of teams they're working with and building.
Yeah. Well, I will say that part of it is you have to hire a staff who can zig and zag, right? Because the job I hire you for today may not be the job you're doing in 3 months, because our business will change. We actually tease in our company that working for Endeavour is like dog years. Like we get more done in a month than most other businesses get done like in a year sometimes, because there's just so much to do. And so getting people who are very fully talented and that can fill in multiple roles and also fill in for each other. And so when I interview people, one of the first things I'll say is, if you're looking for a position where it's well defined and you're going to come in and you're going to know exactly what you're going to do every day, and you get to come in at 8 and leave at 5, and you just have a job, then this is not your job. because we're going to ask you to do something different every day. We're going to get you out of your comfort zone, and you're going to have to be able to cover the other guy. And one of my favorite sayings to my team is, there's a reason why the pitcher needs to be able to know how to cover first base. You have to be able to build that. And again, I think that collaboration and getting people on the team, I like to hire really strong leaders in my group, which I feel that I've done that really successfully. And that really just helps bring that whole synergy. And also to have that real open door policy too, of I'm not afraid of the hard conversations. If you think that there's something not working right, or you think something should be done differently, then let's have that conversation. And again, I think just keeping that whole relationship open like that really helps build teams. And once you see successes, then that's just the best team builder ever.
And what do you look for in leaders? How do you scope out leaders?
Well, it's got to be someone who's going to be able, again, to not be afraid to work a machine, pick up trash, but then also to be able to lead. And it's quite a talent. Not everybody can do it. Some people think, well, I'm really good at my job, so I can lead. But in itself, it's a real skill in itself. And I guess I like to find people that I can work with. And that, because if I'm going to lead in a certain way, I want to make sure they're going to lead. And we do a lot of fun activities. I really love getting to trade shows. And one of the fun things I like to do about 3 or 4 days into a trade show is to touch base with my team. And usually they're falling apart a little bit around the edges. Somebody might have a sore throat and need throat lozenges or something. And so I'll order a Target run, and have Target delivered to the hotel and take care of everybody's little woes and stuff. And that just alone just makes people go, man, like people care here. And so hopefully you build that team and have people who will really go to the mats for you.
Awesome. And so let's talk about some of the types of projects you'd like to do. I mean, as you've grown the business, as it's expanded, changed technologies, added new technologies, what's kind of your sweet spot? Where do you see a lot of the industries or kind of customers resonating with what it is that you offer?
Well, we really always have a sweet spot. I mean, just more sweet to our hearts when we can do projects that impact people. I mean, that's one thing that's amazing to me in this industry, is that there's so many people who are developing products to help mankind and to help people. And so when we see people who are developing products for disabled people or children, we almost won't say no. I mean, we're just going to do it. And that's because that's who we are. I mean, it's funny that we end up hiring people who do a lot of volunteer work on the side. And it's just, again, more says about the people we hire. But I will say that's our sweet spot. And we've done some work like that. And again, it just really brings home some of that internal reward for us. Right. And so, but yeah, I mean, we've done some great projects in automotive and in, some just different roles that are more difficult, or trying to work with a customer who's trying to bring a product to market and struggles with that. And we actually have one that we started working with him when we were running Carbon, and he moved on to somebody else. And he just recently called back and he was like, I'm changing to HP. And I was on HP's website and I see you guys are running HP and you're a partner. He goes, oh my gosh, we get to work together again. And I'm like, that's right. Welcome home. And so just the fact that you can, in this industry, still make those connections. And so we're helping him redevelop it under HP, and he's really stepping out and really developed his product. And so those kind of things, again, I think are really good to us, because we have a tendency to be more partners with customers than just drop us your files and we'll send you parts, which I'm sure hurts us a bit sometimes, but because taking care of people sometimes takes a little bit more time, but I guess that's what we do.
And so is that, maybe talk about kind of the typical customer that you see? Are they kind of early stages of thinking like, hey, I think 3D printing could be a use case here, or I've got this need to get a part out quickly? Like, where Are they coming to you to say, okay, hey, we want to like kind of develop this with you, prove out the technology, and you have the ability to manufacture it for whatever volumes they may need? Like, where's kind of the sweet spot that you like to work with, and in that case?
Well, I'll say, I mean, we have both. I mean, so we have some people who know additive just to have programs to run. We are really sweetly, located outside of Atlanta. So in the Southeast, we are the largest MJF partners. So we have a lot of people who want to buy locally. We have some customers that they're like, oh my gosh, you mean I can drive to your facility? Yeah, you don't have to buy it from California or New York City or any of these other things, that you're local. So that's great business. Again, I like working with the local people too. But I will say, for me personally, yeah, I love getting involved in the ones where we're really developing something. I'm also very passionate about creating that digital catalog, because I think that additive in its long run companies will have digital catalogs, or they'll be able to just order parts. I know some people do that now. We're not quite there yet, but I really want to be able to help with the supply chain, help with getting that whole process down, because that's when we're going to be in true manufacturing.
And where do you see kind of the breakdown of people using the technology? Is it more replacement parts? Is it new product development, or like hitting hey, we can't get this part anymore, like we need to print it? What are there things you kind of patterns and generally the kind of manufacturing use case that keeps coming up in 2023?
Yeah, I will say we're hitting quite a few people are wanting to replace parts, or they're trying to maintain older equipment or other technologies that they don't want to continue to buy it the traditional way. So they come to additive, and the real challenge there is that their original parts were developed for that standard manufacturing process. And then as soon as we go into additive and we try to give them a price that just replicates the part, that's not the right fit. So then it becomes a different consulting discussion of how can we optimize this and still give you what you need. And depending on the industry or the customer, it's a win or it's not. And so that's, again, some people really understand that you have to do that. And other people just, I don't think, are ready to pull the trigger or understand that. And, but hopefully we'll get there.
Do you think it's more of a trust in the technology, that the material's not as good or doesn't look as good, surface finish is different, or price or different. Speed? Okay.
I think it's just different, right?
Yep.
One of the things that I'm real passionate about lately is, really working within other professional groups or industries that are not additive industries, right? Like talking to the supply chain professionals, or talking to the plastic industry, or talking to the metal industry. We're getting involved in things like women in metals and, women in plastic, both, believe it or not, there's women in everything. So you get involved in all these different industries. Like we'll be at NPE next year, at a plastic show showing us off. And that's where I think that's going to be the sweet spot, is really bringing again the technology and getting people comfortable with being able to use additive as a manufacturing process. Again, I think we get back to, if you're a manufacturer, does anybody care how you make it as long as they get the part?
Right.
And so it's really back of saying, yes, I can make this part for you, and here's the cost of it, and show them the value add on the total cost of ownership, and really make the sell pitch for that.
And so you mentioned MetalJet from HP. Do you want to describe a little bit, like it's a fairly new type? It's not like it's been out for a few years from them, but you want to, like, it may not be familiar to everyone. You want to kind of describe what that technology is and maybe a
I'll
use
do my
case or
best.
something. Sure.
I'll do best, but yeah, I mean, it's basically we're using, we're just get started, so we're still doing some development processes, but it's basically taking metal powder and binding it together to create parts. And then after you make it, of course, you have to make it bigger because you're going to center it and make it a smaller part. So our challenge has been, how do we make this not as costly as it could be, because when you're having to build a part and then center it, you have to be able to predict this shrinkage. And so there is software that we use to do that. So we're pretty good on our tolerances of being able to print something with 1 or 2 cycles before we hit the marks, which is pretty amazing. I think that's probably because we took 2.5 years to get to this point of knowledge and education. But it is not for the weak-hearted, I'd say, at the moment, because there is a lot of developmental cost. We hope to drive that down to be more efficient and such. So some people think, oh, you print metals. Can you print this paperclip? Well, no, that's not a good base, good case. And so, but we are finding that it is definitely a technology that if you want to get into metal printing, and that's not any of the other technologies out there, that we are doing a great job, and we're bridging a lot of jobs for HP, because not everybody wants to go out and take on the risk that's associated with putting a metal jet facility, in a building. And but we're fortunate to have been able to do that.
And you've talked about this a little bit already, but from a balance of resources perspective, how much do you balance kind of preaching to the choir, the AMUGs, the Rapids of the worlds, versus folks outside the 3D printing realm? Like, do you see more opportunity? Where do you see kind of more opportunities today with either of those groups?
Well, I think for production ready, it's those people who know the technology. But in order to fill the printers, we have to do the other. And so I would say that we're probably almost 50-50. We're not to the point where we're just focusing heavily on one or the other. Mm-hmm. And that is, again, we go to a lot of shows right now that are additive driven. And then we also do a lot of shows that are industry driven, and where we are having to do the both. I think moving ahead, we'll reduce the number of shows that we're at the additive shows and do more at the industry level. And that is just making those connections into those industries to be able to have workshops and be able to train people on what additive can do.
And is that like the design part of it is like, hey, here's a new capability that you're able to unlock because of the technology, or it's short of lead time, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, one of the initiatives that we're working on right now is working with Georgia Tech Manufacturers Group. Georgia Tech is very close to our hearts. We have a lot of Georgia Tech engineers on staff. And so they have a group that is their manufacturer group, where they work with local manufacturers to bring in different technologies and to help small and medium-sized businesses grow. So they have partnered with our county for manufacturers group. And so we're working with the local manufacturers along with Georgia Tech to start teaching them additive. And so we will be having regular meetings with Georgia Tech, and possibly even with the metal jet, working with them on them designing parts, us printing them, and teaching those manufacturers how they can do jigs and fixtures or different types of parts that are no longer available. And again, that's getting into that manufacturers group. And that's the local manufacturers. And that's a good thing. And we're also getting ready to partner next year with Georgia Tech on the academic side of bringing students in and working with them, and working with the team over there that's doing additive manufacturing, and leading into how do we get students to start thinking about this. And I've talked to a couple of the professors, and they're like, yeah, we love doing these, give them a project to work on, but we have to give them some seeds, on how to think and what to think about. And so since we have some of our engineers are kind of, I'll say, more recent grads from Georgia Tech, they're going to be working with the students and kind of show them and give them ideas for that. And our goal is to have every Georgia Tech engineering student, through our doors and for a tour or an internship. I mean, we've already had, 4 or 5 Georgia Tech interns, which I think 3 or 4 we've hired. So it's, we love, again, bringing in that new talent and running those internship programs.
Fantastic. And what piece of advice would you give kind of folks that are maybe a few years behind you, in the sense that, like, hey, we see the technology either from a service bureau perspective of providing parts from printer, or even making that investment internally for an individual company? Are there lessons learned that, like, you would, if you were to do this all over again, I would have done this differently? Are there any things that stand out on that front?
Well, I think that, you know, just building a good business, because you have to make sure you do that. And that's hard when you're, I mean, I'm sure everybody has a passion to do, like, say, additive manufacturing, but you have to work on the HR side. You have to make sure you have accounting. You have to make sure you have all these things in place too. So that is one thing I'd always recommend to everybody. We started really early with our HR, of making sure that we were going to, you know, make people happy. I mean, we give good benefits. We have a good HR team. And every year we do what we call a pulse interview to make sure that, you know, we're in tune with our customer, with our employees. So I would recommend to always make sure you take care of your people, because people are going to work internally for internal rewards and external rewards. External is the money that can always be fixed or not fixed, but internals are a lot harder to fix. But I think too, I would really review the technologies that are going to actually bring people in the doors. You know, I always think that not everybody is going to start their manufacturing process with MJF or with a, you know, with metal jet. They're going to start with other technologies. And I think that's how companies should start too. Is start with the smaller technologies. You don't need to jump fully in to these bigger, expensive machines. And, you know, and I watch closely some of these other companies that are just rocking it. And, you know, and I love to talk to a lot of them too. AMUG, I love AMUG because I can just talk to some people who are doing some remarkable work. And I'm just, you know, they probably know it, but you know, I troll them all the time. You know, I'm following them on LinkedIn or watching their websites and seeing what they're doing. And again, I just love that aspect of it. So again, don't be afraid to watch what's going on in the industry and be involved in AMUG, be involved in listening to podcasts or different things of that nature. I have learned so much from just digging into this industry and getting to know people.
Awesome. So one last question. I've asked this the last few years of people, a favorite book or writing or piece of art that's inspired you along your additive manufacturing journey?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll tell you, I was thinking about this because I know I listened to your podcast, so I think you're going to ask this question.
You're prepared.
I was prepared. And I was actually, you know, working with some little kids lately, and I was going to say everyone poops, but I don't think that's probably the best choice. But I'll say just career wise and in anything, I've always liked the standard 7 habits of highly effective people. And that's an old book by Stephen Covey, but I lean into that a lot because, you know, habit 4 is win-win. And that's when you have to really be able to work with anybody in any situation. And when you walk into a room, you want to make sure the other guy wins. And so many people want to come in and win, which means you lose. And so to me, that is just, I keep going back to it. I reread it sometimes and just do it. And I know that's probably a funny book, but it's, again, it just centers me sometime to make sure that I'm always making sure everybody else wins. And I coach that to my managers and my leadership team, is that, you know, if you're the only one winning, this isn't going to work.
Thanks so much, Janet, for your time today. Excited to see you at AMUG in a few months and around the conference circuit. And we'll put your website and kind of all the things that you guys do in the podcast info as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ready? All right, bye.